referees are calling, they're blind. Like I don't know what they're calling or they're told to call. I don't know if it's the WNBA commissioner, Cathy Engelbert, calling these making them do these goofy calls. It's not good basketball. It's pretty obvious. The fans see it. I mean, it's blatant.
The WNBA is currently engulfed in an unprecedented crisis, a firestorm so intense it's igniting fervent demands for the suspension of none other than Commissioner Cathy Engelbert herself. At the white-hot core of this explosion, the perceived systematic mistreatment of the league's biggest star, Caitlin Clark. What began as whispers about aggressive defense has metastasized into outright accusations of blatant bias, deeply questionable officiating, and a stunning, almost inexplicable failure to protect the very player single-handedly credited with unleashing the league's newfound popularity. Is this merely a case of controversial calls, or is something far more calculated, far more alarming, truly unfolding behind the curtain?
Then what is the Caitlin Clark effect? And here is what Google told me. The Caitlin Clark effect refers to the significant increase in popularity and visibility of women's basketball, particularly in the WNBA, driven by the rising star of Caitlin Clark. Her record-breaking performances and engaging personality have captivated audiences, leading to increased attendance, media coverage, and overall interest in the sport.
Just a short time ago, the narrative surrounding the WNBA felt like a fairy tale come to life. The phenomenon dubbed the Caitlin Clark effect wasn't just hype, it was a tangible revolution. We saw the league's popularity surge like never before, attendance numbers shattering records in arenas across the country, and television viewership figures skyrocketing, reaching heights previously unimaginable for women's professional basketball. Major media outlets were suddenly dedicating unprecedented coverage, and lucrative new broadcast and sponsorship deals were materializing. Her captivating talent, her clutch performances, and her engaging personality weren't just attracting dedicated basketball aficionados. They were pulling in a massive new audience of casual fans, generating a level of excitement and mainstream attention that felt truly transformative. It wasn't just a new chapter for the WNBA, it felt like an entirely new book, all thanks to the arrival of one standout rookie from Iowa.
The month, the chickens was coming home to roost for the WNBA, because I'm telling you right now, there has been a lot of spooky things going on and people is tired of it. And quite frankly, the viewership is going down. See, the viewership was supposed to have been going up exponential, bang, how it took off last year. And I'm here to tell you that is not happening. Only team that is averaging 1 million views per game and looking like it's on track to maintain their viewership for the most part is the Indiana.
Yet, almost as soon as Clark stepped onto the professional hardwood, a deeply troubling counter-narrative began to overshadow the initial excitement. Instead of being celebrated, protected, and showcased as the invaluable asset she clearly was, she quickly became the focal point of an intense, relentless, and often aggressive physical onslaught. Opponents seemed determined to make every single possession a brutal test, initiating contact that many felt went far beyond the bounds of standard hard-nosed defense. Shoves, grabs, hard bumps off the ball. It accumulated quickly, looking, to a growing number of observers, less like legitimate defense and more like a deliberate strategy to wear her down, intimidate her, or even potentially injure her.
And I'm telling you right now, man, Caitlin Clark's shot was off, bro. These last couple games, she was not shooting well from three. We all seen it. She's missing a bunch of shots. I believe Caitlin Clark been hurt.
Adding fuel to this rapidly growing fire was the utterly bewildering response from the referees assigned to her games. Time and time again, blatant, undeniable fouls committed against Clark were simply ignored. Drives to the basket, where she absorbed significant, sometimes jarring contact, resulted in an infuriating silence from the whistles. It was as if the fundamental rules of the game were being selectively applied. This stark contrast was made even more apparent by the fact that minor, sometimes even questionable fouls were still being called against her or her teammates. This created a jarring, almost unbelievable double standard. She could be subjected to excessive contact without consequence for her opponents, but the slightest infraction from her or her team seemed to draw a whistle. The absurdity reached a peak when Clark received a technical foul simply for voicing her frustration, saying, "Come on," after opponents committed fouls that were, yet again, ignored. It was a moment that crystallized the perceived unfairness for millions watching.
That's the only conclusion I can come to is they
Right.
want
They
want it to fail.
They're
Like,
calling hand check fouls on their biggest player. Could you imagine LeBron getting hand check fouls, or anybody, SGA, whomever, the biggest stars getting hand check? Yes, it may not be the only reason, but it doesn't help. You're absolutely right. But yes, you're sitting that star player, that cash cow, on the bench, and honestly, she is WNBA. Caitlin Clark is the only reason people are
sells out home and away every single game.
If you are enjoying, please subscribe. Clark's treatment starkly contrasts with the league's marketing focus on her star power.
Then, the cold, hard data began to emerge, painting a picture so stark, so deeply troubling, that even the most skeptical sports fans couldn't dismiss it. Consider these shocking statistics, numbers that defy simple explanation. Caitlin Clark has been involved in a staggering 17% of all flagrant fouls called across the entire WNBA season to date. Let that sink in. One player in a league with hundreds of athletes competing every night is the subject of nearly a fifth of the most serious, potentially dangerous fouls. It's a statistical anomaly that should have triggered alarms within the league office from day one.
finally a player that's worth paying the money for. Caitlin Clark comes along. What do, WNBA? You beat her up. You treat her like crap. You treat her like she's dog doo-doo, dude. I never seen this in any sport, bro.
But the data gets even more bizarre, even more unsettling. An astonishing 80% of those flagrant fouls called against Caitlin Clark originated from players on a single team, the Chicago Sky. 80%. The statistical probability of such a wildly skewed distribution happening purely by random chances, frankly, virtually zero. It's less likely than winning the multi-state lottery while simultaneously being struck by lightning on a leap year. This wasn't just a coincidence. The pattern was so concentrated, so extreme, that it strongly suggested something far more deliberate was at play than simple competitive intensity.
All right, now this is what I'm going to say about this situation. Is the Fever players, you got to know, this is how they're going to ref your games. They're going to let Caitlin Clark be held, be hand-checked, have her arm chopped, and they're barely going to call fouls. Because of players are going to get away with what they get away with. If you allow a player to foul a player all game long, guess what? They're going to foul them all game long.
For a rapidly growing number of fans, analysts, and former players, this isn't just basketball anymore. The sheer volume, intensity, and concentrated source of flagrant fouls against Clark, combined with the pattern of uncalled contact, leads many to a chilling conclusion. This looks to many like a calculated, possibly coordinated effort to target, intimidate, physically wear down, and potentially injure the league's biggest draw. It raises deeply uncomfortable questions about whether this behavior constitutes targeted harassment, insidiously disguised under the guise of intense competition and enabled by a permissive officiating standard.
Refereeing, we know it was terrible. We absolutely know the refereeing was shocking. Like, it was one of the worst referee games I've ever seen down the stretch. Like, it looked like it was rigged. It looked like it was rigged. There's no other way to describe it. It looked like it was rigged. I'm not saying it was rigged. I don't think it was rigged. It looked like it was rigged. And I tweeted this out last night. That if the WNBA is not rigged, they're doing a great job of looking like making.
What has amplified the public outrage is the widespread perception that this unfolding drama wasn't hidden. Everyone saw it. Fans, armed with smartphones and access to replays, inundated social media with countless video compilations meticulously highlighting missed calls and documenting the excessive contact against Clark. Coaches, like the Indiana Fever's head coach Stephanie White, were vocal in their post-game press conferences, expressing frustration and openly criticizing officiating they characterized as fundamentally unfair. Analysts, both traditional and those online, meticulously tracked the data and pointed out the undeniable discrepancies. Yet, despite this mountain of clear evidence and vocal concern, Commissioner Engelbert and her officiating department appeared to largely dismiss the incidents. They framed the rough play as merely normal rivalry or just physical basketball, words that struck many as tone-deaf at best and actively dismissive at worst. This apparent ongoing denial in the face of overwhelming evidence has only deepened the public's suspicion that league officials might be deliberately turning a blind eye, potentially enabling behavior that actively harms the game's integrity and its biggest star.
She avoided the WNBA referee question. He just said, he stated she could have got a bunch of calls, but she just skipped right over it.
I think, again, that's why this year sustain the momentum we had last year and gain even new viewers, because if you look at, we're up triple digits in every category, in every demographic, and young people, old people, young girls and boys were having watch parties and watching our games. So it was incredible.
This is so bad. She avoided the WNBA referee questions about the calls with the physical. This is
perhaps the most egregious illustration of this perceived officiating chaos unfolded during a pivotal recent game against the New York Liberty. What should have been a high-profile showcase featuring two talented teams turned into, in the eyes of many, a disturbing display of how questionable officiating can dominate and potentially distort an outcome. Replays from every angle showed Clark driving hard to the basket, absorbing significant, undeniable contact. Pushes, bumps, hits that would draw fouls in almost any other context. Yet time and time again, the referees' whistles remained infuriatingly silent. In stark contrast, Liberty players seemed to be drawing fouls on minimal contact, leading to a lopsided free throw disparity that felt fundamentally imbalanced and, to many, suspicious. Coach Stephanie White, a seasoned veteran who understands the game at its deepest levels, didn't mince words, expressing her profound frustration with officiating she described as fundamentally unfair. When experienced voices, individuals with deep credibility within the sport, start openly questioning the integrity of the calls, it sends a powerful signal that the problem has likely moved far beyond simple human error or incompetence into something far more concerning.
But Stephanie White, she just admitted that she got fined. For what? She just got fined for saying she wants the officiating to be fair. She said
the culmination of this contentious game, and perhaps the moment that ignited the most intense outrage, came in the final seconds. With the game hanging in the balance, Caitlin Clark drove towards the basket with a chance to tie the score. The contact was clear, the foul seemed absolutely undeniable to virtually everyone watching. Yet, astonishingly, the officials swallowed their whistles, allowing the play to continue and enabling New York to escape with a victory that a vast number of fans felt was not earned through fair play on the court. It was the kind of crucial, game-deciding non-call that makes loyal viewers question everything they are seeing. It fuels the uncomfortable suspicion that perhaps they aren't watching legitimate competition at all, but rather outcomes that feel, to some degree, predetermined or heavily influenced. The outcry online was immediate and deafening, with many observers stating the game looked rigged, even if they weren't definitively saying it was rigged.
The reason why the merch sales are what they are, the reason why there's such potential for the future is because Caitlin Clark can flat out play basketball. She is that one. She really is. And if you didn't realize it before she got injured, you certainly realize it right now, unless you're putting blinders on and absolutely pretending. The Caitlin Clark effect is all those things that I said. But those things all hinge on the fact that she is a basketball talent unlike we have ever seen in the women's basketball.
At the very epicenter of this spiraling crisis is Commissioner Cathy Engelbert and her perceived failure to adequately confront what has become the most glaring officiating scandal in recent WNBA history is drawing intense scrutiny. Despite the undeniable mountain of evidence, the deafening fan outrage, the vocal complaints from players and coaches, Engelbert has remained remarkably silent on the specific allegations of systematic targeting against her league's most prominent star and the widespread concerns about biased officiating. For many within the WNBA community, this inaction feels deeply disappointing, and worse, like part of a disturbing pattern. Engelbert has faced significant criticism before for her handling of other serious issues, particularly her perceived inadequate responses to accusations of racism and harassment within the league. When previously questioned about the dark side of social media and the racist harassment directed at WNBA players, her answers were widely criticized as dismissive and lacking the appropriate gravity, sparking immediate backlash from players and fans alike. Her apparent inability or unwillingness to address these profound concerns with the seriousness they warrant has become a persistent point of frustration, solidifying the perception among many that she is not adequately protecting the players or the integrity of the league she leads.
And that's why this league is a joke. Cathy Engelbert should be ashamed of herself and just resign. She's garbage for this league. She's a garbage. They need a new commissioner, bro. They need me as commissioner. First of all, cut all this crap out. Let's just play some freaking basketball. Make the league about basketball. Isn't it a basketball league? Make it about basketball.
The Caitlin Clark controversy has brought to light serious issues within the league's officiating, administration, and overall competitive integrity.
The ongoing Clark situation has, for many, only confirmed what they suspected for months: that Engelbert is either unwilling or perhaps even unable to shield the league's stars, particularly its biggest one, from obvious bias, questionable officiating, and what appears to be targeted physical play. Whether this is driven by unconscious bias, conscious favoritism towards certain established teams, or sheer administrative incompetence, the outcome for the league's credibility is devastatingly the same. Each missed call against Clark, each instance of apparent double standards, each flagrant foul that feels enabled by inaction, chips away at the league's public trust. This perceived neglect isn't just a minor issue. It is actively damaging the WNBA's hard-won reputation and undermining the fundamental integrity of the game at a moment when it is under the brightest spotlight in its history. When directly asked about the WNBA refereeing issues and the specific calls Clark should have received, Engelbert, in at least one instance, seemed to sidestep the question, choosing instead to pivot to the league's positive viewership numbers, an avoidance that many found deeply frustrating and telling. Perhaps the most striking and potentially powerful aspect of this entire controversy has been the unprecedented, organic response from the fans. WNBA supporters are not merely complaining about a few bad calls, which is common in any sport. They are actively organizing, mobilizing across social media platforms, sharing meticulously edited video evidence highlighting missed fouls against Clark, posting statistical analyses exposing the perceived bias, and issuing increasingly urgent calls for accountability. This isn't a manufactured marketing campaign. It is a genuine grassroots movement demanding fairness and protection for the player who has brought a tidal wave of new attention and interest to women's basketball. Clark's influence on the league has been truly transformative, driving record attendance, soaring TV ratings, and securing mainstream media coverage that was once unthinkable. Yet, in the face of this incredible momentum, league leadership appears to many inexplicably passive, allowing their most valuable asset to be physically challenged and seemingly worn down through what is widely perceived as unfair officiating and systemic bias. The staggering irony of this situation is not lost on anyone following closely. The WNBA finally possesses a bona fide superstar, a player with the ability to capture the imagination of casual sports fans, generate unprecedented excitement, and translate that energy into tangible revenue growth and future opportunities. Yet, the league's administrative and officiating response suggests, to many, a deeply troubling focus on protecting existing power structures or navigating internal politics, rather than decisively leveraging and protecting this once-in-a-generation talent. This profound disconnect between Caitlin Clark's undeniable positive impact and the league's handling of her highlights, what many see as a fundamental, potentially catastrophic unwillingness or inability to embrace the immense opportunities currently before them. The perception that the league is actively harming its golden goose is spreading rapidly. As head coach Stephanie White implicitly acknowledged, sometimes at the cost of fines, the need for fair officiating is paramount. And what makes this situation particularly devastating for the WNBA is the critical timing. Women's professional basketball is experiencing an unprecedented surge in popularity, with millions of new fans discovering the sport and longtime supporters becoming more engaged than ever. Caitlin Clark's rookie season was anticipated as a triumphant celebration of this progress, a showcase for a league ready to firmly establish itself among the major professional sports leagues. Instead, what viewers are witnessing is a slow-motion crisis that threatens to erode years of hard-won growth and tireless effort. Casual viewers, drawn in by Clark's star power and the promise of exciting basketball, are instead confronted with what many perceive as blatant bias, confusing and questionable officiating, and an administrative response that feels more focused on managing optics, or perhaps even fostering manufactured drama, than on ensuring genuinely fair and competitive play. These new fans, who may be willing to tolerate minor officiating flaws, are far less likely to stick around if they begin to perceive the core product as rigged, unjust, or fundamentally compromised. Caitlin Clark's recent injury, a left quadriceps strain, tragically exemplifies the potential real-world consequences of the league's broader dysfunction. She has rapidly become the most exciting, impactful, and economically significant player since legends like Diana Taurasi. Yet, she has been systematically targeted with intense physical play and subjected to what many believe is a pattern of officiating bias on the court. Her injury, which many argue could have been prevented or at least mitigated with proper, consistent enforcement of the rules against excessive contact, starkly underscores the league's perceived failure to adequately protect its most valuable asset and maintain competitive integrity. This escalating crisis not only puts Caitlin Clark's promising career at unnecessary risk, but also jeopardizes the WNBA's reputation and its future at a critical juncture, a moment where growth, credibility, and trust are more vital than they have ever been. The potential for future merchandise sales, for packed arenas years from now, for ever-increasing broadcast deals, all of it hinges on the undeniable fact that Caitlin Clark can flat-out play basketball at an elite, captivating level. She is that rare, transcendent talent. And if anyone didn't fully grasp her significance before this injury and the surrounding controversy, the current situation has made it blindingly, painfully obvious to anyone without blinders on. The Caitlin Clark effect isn't just about popularity. It's about her exceptional talent on the court. A talent unlike anything many have seen in the women's game. The fervent calls for Commissioner Engelbert's suspension extend far beyond simple fan frustration. They represent a serious, fundamental demand for accountability from a leadership widely perceived to have fallen short at the most crucial levels. Reports suggest mounting pressure behind the scenes, with some team owners and executives reportedly questioning Engelbert's handling of this crisis and other controversies plaguing the league, regardless of whether she is ultimately suspended, forced to resign, or manages to weather this storm. The damage to the WNBA's credibility in the eyes of a rapidly expanding fan base may already be profound and potentially lasting. This crisis doesn't exist in a vacuum. It underscores deeper, systemic issues within the league's leadership and raises significant questions about its fundamental ability to restore trust, implement necessary reforms, and effectively navigate the complex challenges that lie ahead. As frustrated voices online declare, this situation is making the league look like a joke. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, some argue, should be ashamed and consider resigning, with many believing the league desperately needs new leadership. Someone who will cut all this crap out and simply make the league about basketball. Isn't that, after all, what it's supposed to be about? The Caitlin Clark controversy has ripped the lid off serious, underlying issues within the WNBA's officiating, administration, and overall competitive integrity. Problems that clearly extend beyond any single commissioner or isolated decision. The WNBA stands at a critical, precarious crossroads. It has a choice. It can continue down the current path, one marked by widely questioned officiating standards, a perceived lack of player protection, and organizational dysfunction, thereby risking the alienation of its newly acquired loyal fans and potentially losing the momentum generated by its brightest star. Or it can finally, decisively commit to implementing genuine, meaningful reforms. Reforms that ensure consistent, fair competition for all players and unequivocally prioritize player safety above all else. The right choice, the choice that safeguards the league's future, should be glaringly obvious. However, given the league's troubled history under its current leadership, a significant degree of uncertainty about its willingness or capacity to make that difficult but necessary choice regrettably remains. Caitlin Clark, along with the dedicated fanbase she has inspired and the broader community of women's basketball supporters, undeniably deserve better. The future of women's professional basketball, its potential for continued growth, its ability to attract sponsors, its credibility in the global sports landscape, fundamentally depends on the league's willingness to openly acknowledge these systemic problems and take bold, decisive, and transparent action to address them immediately. Time is not a luxury the WNBA possesses right now. Each day of inaction, each missed opportunity to restore trust, further diminishes the league's credibility and its crucial chance to capitalize on what is unequivocally a pivotal, potentially transformative moment in its history. The league's next steps, or the lack of them, will be watched by millions, and they will ultimately determine whether the WNBA can rise to meet this immense challenge and fulfill its incredible potential, or risk losing its hard-won momentum altogether.